Jim, earlier some guy was talking about this being Friday as if that's the end of the week. Well, it's the end of the work week for most people, but you know, when you work for yourself, it's 7 days a week. But I accept the fact that the normal work week is 5 days. I have a wonderful quote, and it's from Positive Quotes for Every Day. I think this is really cool, actually. Hold on 1 second. Oh, here it is. Lily Tomlin. For fast acting relief, try slowing down. For fast acting relief, try slowing down. I think that's pretty cool because often we're in so much of a rush that we rush to get nowhere sometimes. And sometimes when we're rushing, we're following the old adage, which is more haste, less speed. It's another way of saying it, right? Today's reading is interesting, and I do have some observations, but I'll keep my observations till the end. And remember, they're my observations. Sometimes I disagree with the writers in some areas, and they are entitled to their own opinion, and they could be very well right and me wrong, but I do have my own opinions on some of these things. Practice spiritual principle. I have no problem whatsoever with that, nor with the quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe from several centuries ago. Knowing is not enough. We must apply it. Willing is not enough. We must do. You know, some people are always getting ready to get ready, right? And this is really a sobering one, especially for people like ministers. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. And that's right towards the end of the Science of Mind textbook. It's on page 421 and paragraph 1. And Reverend John Waterhouse actually refers back to it right now. He says, I remember the first time I read The Final Conclusion in the 1938 edition of The Science of Mind, especially the above quote, which is far easier to teach the truth than to practice it. It says, when I had the opportunity to teach ministerial students over the years, I explained to them that their speaking and teaching abilities are important, and people will be blessed by what they say. But how they conduct their lives will create far greater value and understanding as their students observe them in real life. In other words, practice what you preach, correct? Then he says we must always apply what we teach to our own lives. Of course we must. Or we're being contradictory. Absolutely. And then he says, and nothing good will come from it. I'm going to come back to that. Ernest Holmes is right. The principles we teach are relatively simple to understand, but they are much harder to apply to our daily lives. The only way around this is to maintain a strong spiritual practice of prayer and mindful reflection, and to stay consciously aware of the thoughts, words, and actions that we produce every day. It's important to understand that practicing spiritual principle may become more natural over time, but it's never something that we can take for granted. We must constantly hold ourselves accountable for our thoughts. Why? And he says, if we want to avoid creating unpleasant outcomes. All right. I want to go back to that and another thing. He says, we must always apply what we teach to our own lives. Or we're being contradictory. Absolutely. 100% agree with him. He says, and nothing good will come, or we're being contradictory, and then nothing good will come from it. I really think you're going to be careful when you say things like that, because it really depends on how strong your emotions are when you apply it to what you're teaching. So I'm always cautious in talking in absolute terms when it comes to saying, hey, everything in your life was what you personally created for yourself, and everything that you think and feel from now on is absolutely going to reflect in your lives. As we said before, it's complicated. I mean, it is really complicated. You could say that when we're being contradictory to what we teach, there is a good chance that nothing good will come from it. And similarly, he says we must constantly hold ourselves accountable for our thoughts if we want to avoid creating unpleasant outcomes. Once again, I would say we should hold ourselves accountable for our thoughts, and especially if we're concerned about potential outcomes, because nothing is absolute. What I'm taking a little bit, where I'm a little bit of a disagreement with Reverend John Waterhouse is, I don't think you should talk in absolutes because you don't know. I mean, you really don't know. You often don't even know how strong your feelings are. But the point is that he's making, really, that I do agree with, is that if you're not practicing what you preach, then you're not setting a good example, and there's a good chance that people will gain no benefit from it. But there's always going to be people out there in the audience, quote unquote, who take that principle, look at the person who's preaching it and say, well, that is a really good point, and I'm going to practice it. Even though this person isn't doing it, I'm going to do it myself. And that's where I'm coming from. And the same thing with holding ourselves accountable for our own thoughts. Yeah, absolutely. If we constantly think and feel negative stuff, there is a really good chance that something unpleasant or undesirable is going to come from it. But it's no guarantee, because we don't know how everything all fits together. As we said before, everything is interconnected, so it's complicated. But there is a good chance that nothing good will come from it, because belief, constantly impressed, which is thought plus feeling, constantly impressed into universal mind, does produce results. But as I said, because we're connected with everything else, we really don't know what those results are going to be. I am accountable for myself for everything I think, say, and do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am accountable to myself for everything I think, say, and do. And then he says, my life is magnificent. I think you separate those two things out completely. Don't say them all together. My life is magnificent. And if you want to say I'm accountable to myself for everything I think, say, and do, fine. It's also good. So, I know. As I said, in principle, I have no problem with everything he's saying there, except I don't think we should talk in absolutes about things. So, that's just my opinion. Obviously, he may or may not agree with me. I don't know. But that is my thought for the day, or my thoughts for the day. And Reverend Lisa, my colleague, might have different ideas on this. I don't know. Our leader, Reverend Dr. Jesse Jennings, also may have different thoughts. But I can only tell you what I've been taught, what I've learned, what I've practiced, and what I believe. So my belief for each and every one here is a wonderful, wonderful day and a magnificent life. And until next time, namaste.